cosmic/existential horror, especially in musicals, there's a good chance you're already a fan of Star Kid's Hatchetfield series. However, very few people have Teen Beach Movie come to mind when considering the genres, and they really should. Frankly, these two works have a lot more in common than you might already expect. Hi fellas, my name's Teddy Clyde, and I have too many opinions on things that do not matter. As a quick warning, I will be talking about major plot points for both The Guy Who Doesn't Like Musicals, as well as both of the Teen Beach movies, so if you really don't want to get spoiled, feel free to pop those up in another tab and come back in approximately 5 hours and 32 minutes. I am assuming most people don't have a base knowledge of all of the projects and don't really have the 5.5 hours to spare, so I will be going through a general plot rundown for all that you need to know. Also, to make it abundantly clear, I do understand that these are technically different stories, so this is just for fun, and if you don't like fun, I don't know why you're here. If you do like fun, however, please check out my other videos. I think they're pretty neat. Starting out with the original Teen Beach Movie plot, it follows two teens named Mac and Brady in the current day. They have spent the whole summer surfing and falling in love, and it's all going great up until Mac's aunt shows up at the end of summer saying, "Hey bestie, we're sending you off to private school," which no one is thrilled about. But Mac had already agreed to this, so it's happening. Brady is especially not thrilled about this because Mac literally never mentioned it to him, so he ends up asking her to stay. The day Mac is set to leave, the ocean's going crazy, so she decides she has to surf those waves on what we later find out is a magical surfboard. While she's out there, it suddenly becomes dangerous to be surfing, and so all of the warning alarms start going off, which she politely ignores. Brady realizes she's out there and goes to get her on a jet ski, but while they are both out there, a giant wave swallows them whole. And then they die. Okay, so they're not, like, actually dead, allegedly, but I have some doubts. They're, at the very least, trapped in some, like, purgatory-esque situation. Either way, they are no longer in the same ocean, the storm that was attacking them is gone, and once they get to the beach, a song intro starts. And they have found themselves trapped inside a musical. To be specific, Brady's favorite movie, which is called Wet Side Story. The surfers sing their big intro song, and then a little bit later the bikers sing theirs, which Brady is just so excited about, he ends up joining in on this. But while this is all happening, Mac has realized, like, this is super fucked up, and that, hey, maybe they should be trying to figure out how to get out of the situation they have found themselves in. Also, here's a general character guide so you know who the important characters are and what they kind of look like. The pair decide to figure out what's happening, but unfortunately, the movie's in-universe time jump also occurs for them, so it goes from day to night instantly. So we're now at just the next plot point, which is when the head of the surfers falls in love with the head of the bikers' younger sister. So this is Tanner and Layla, and they're supposed to fall in love to what is the best song of this movie, Falling For You. But like, oops, Mac and Brady are also there and get in the way of their meet cute, and so now Layla and Tanner are in love with the wrong people, Mac and Brady, who are not supposed to be here at all. The remainder of the plot of this movie is Mac and Brady trying to fix the plot of the Wet Side Story movie, because if they don't, they are going to get stuck inside the musical. And by stuck, I mean they will either, like, fully vanish, or they will, like, lose themselves and become part of it. There's also a whole subplot in this movie of two evil scientists trying to steal the beach from the bikers and the surfers using an evil weather machine, which I kind of love the implication that Tanner, Butchie, who is Layla's brother, as well as some random guy in the surfers, like maybe Rascal or something, would die a la West Side Story if not for this whole, like, evil scientist subplot. Regardless of the murder they didn't feel like putting in this Disney Channel original movie, Mac and Brady are fucked. The 1960s movie logic has started to, like, affect them, so when they go into the water, their hair and clothing doesn't get wet, and then they just keep getting roped into songs. The clearest example of this is the song Can't Stop Singing, which has Mac fighting the singing and dancing that is happening to her, but cannot stop herself from doing it. So these two need to get out ASAP, or else they're in. They then get got by the evil scientist, which then Tanner and Layla must join the gang's forces together to go save them. And those two fall in love in the process, so woo, plotline back on track. This ends in a big silly fight between the gangs and the evil scientist dude, and they end up rigging their big weather machine, which causes a big storm, which, for plot reasons, Mac and Brady need to use to surf back to the real world on their magical surfboard. Before they leave, though, Layla gives Mac a necklace with a little flower thingy on it, which is the same as the magical surfboard, which would not be important if not for that awful sequel that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. Luckily, Mac and Brady make it back okay, and while they're on the ocean still, Mac surfs those big waves, and she does great doing it, and this is all encompassing, gives her the confidence to say that she wants to stay here for school as opposed to go to the fancy boarding school that her aunt wants her to go to, because making choices for what will make her happy is okay. And then the whole movie ends with a big song and dance number on the beach in the real world, the implications of which we will get to later. And then, of course, they want to set up a sequel, so in the credits, they put a little end credit scene with a bunch of the characters from the movie world coming into the real world, though this kind of does get a little retconned in the sequel. And now to the sequel that is unfortunately relevant. In this, we find out that Mac and Brady have only known each other and been dating, but like the knowing each other part, for 3 months, which makes the whole Brady asking Mac to stay for him thing crazy. But now that school is up and starting, we find out that they're actually such total opposite people. Like, Brady's out here wearing flip-flops to class, and Mac wants to go to college, so they're just such opposites, and however will they bridge these gaps and find something in common again? Meanwhile, in the movie world of West Side Story, Layla has had it with playing the part of this helpless girl and starts messing with the script, which leaves everyone around her very confused, and also they start like magically poofing away. So she decides, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to the real world where Mac said it's so cool and girls have the choice to do things. Lucky for her, Mac lost the necklace in the ocean earlier, which made its way back to the movie world and serves as the same like ocean portal key that the surfboard does. Again, they have the same like flower symbol on them. That is never explained. I'm skipping over much of this movie because it is boring and just kinda sucks. Like, Mac and Brady are fighting on and off the entire time, and it's just kind of nothing. There's also plenty of songs throughout, but they are all really bad, especially compared to the original. So just kind of assume there's more happening that I'm just not mentioning. But getting to the actual things that do matter, Layla and Tanner ends up coming with her to the real world. So, yay, they are here now. But, unfortunately, that 1960s movie logic is, in fact, sticking with them. The whole, like, not getting the hair wet, etc., etc. And so, of course, when they start singing, the people around them start joining in. Which, again, this is happening in the real world. Then more plot with Layla wanting to be her own person happens, and so she throws that necklace back in the ocean because she wants to stay here. It then moves its way back to the movie world, and a little bit later, a bunch of the movie characters come to the real world because they just keep disappearing, and so the group of them are saying, hey guys, you guys need to come back here so that we stop disappearing. So all of those people who are from the movie in the real world need to get back now, or else the movie will cease to exist. But this being a Disney movie, those guys can't leave until Mac and Brady are back together and are happy, which makes this whole process take way too long. So even though Tanner and Layla make it back to their world, it's too late. West Side Story ceases to exist. And because allegedly Mac and Brady met and bonded over that movie at the beginning of summer, like this is how they got together, they now no longer know each other at all. They don't even leave it there though, as West Side Story has been replaced by Layla Queen of the Beach, which is now Mac's favorite movie instead of Brady's. These two characters end up bonding over this at a beginning of school beach drive-in movie night thing that Mac is hosting. So they get together, but functionally the plot of the first movie and the vast majority of the second didn't happen anymore. They just pulled a Cinderella 3 on us, but it's so much worse. So how is this at all similar to a Star Kid musical about an office worker named Paul? Well, hit musical, The Guy Who Doesn't Like Musicals, at its core is a story of a group of people trying to avoid getting taken over by a musical hive mind, which does feel oddly familiar. The show opens with an intro song about our guy Paul, who is truly just a guy, and he works in an office, and he hates musicals. We are then quickly introduced to a lot of the other main characters who work in his office with him, this being Bill, his coworker and functionally best friend. We also have Ted, who is just pathetic and horny, and then there's Charlotte, who is sad and emotional, and also having an affair with Ted. Outside of their office, there's also a character named Emma, who works at a nearby coffee shop. She is very, very grumpy, and Paul has a huge crush on her. They do the usual setting up plot things, but stuff really starts going down when a meteor crashes into a local theater. The next day, Paul is on his way to work and people start singing and dancing around him, but he just assumes it's a flash mob, but either way, he hates it. Once he gets to work, his boss calls him into his office and also starts aggressively singing at him. He leaves in a panic to go get some coffee and visit Emma, which he really is hoping things are going to be fine and normal there. Unfortunately, whatever got Paul's boss as well as the people outside also got Emma's coworkers, so they run out to avoid getting infected by this musical virus thing that is taking over. They outside run into Paul's coworkers who fled their office for the exact same reason he did. A little bit later, they then run into Charlotte's husband, who is a cop, and he sings a very silly song about being a cop, until Ted, my main man, takes a garbage lid, hits him on the head with it, and kills him. Our gang then heads to Emma's professor's house to hide out because he has both been prepping for the doomsday for 20 years and also can maybe help them figure out what is happening right now. While they're there, they examine the brain of the dead cop, and it is blue and goopy, and they determine he was dead well before Ted whacked him. So, yay, Ted's not a murderer, I guess. But what did happen is an alien hive mind situation took over his brain. Everyone leaves the room with the cop except for Charlotte, who is pleading and hoping that he is not actually dead. And luckily for her, he isn't. So he wakes up and starts pleading with her to release him, and she caves and lets him free. And he immediately kills her. So yay, Charlotte's part of the hive mind as well. More stuff happens with Paul and Emma, which is cute, but then we're back with Charlotte and her husband, who are trying to kill the group. Quickly, the professor shoots them with a shotgun, iconic of him. Then, for plot reasons, Paul and Bill head off to go save Bill's daughter, but in the process, Bill does not survive. Those still in the professor's house now have to deal with the fact that the professor is thinking, hey, maybe actually the evil alien hive mind that is taking over and killing everybody isn't actually that bad. And he ends up tying everybody up and starts singing to attract the aliens to their location so that they can join, which will kill everybody. Meanwhile, Paul is saved by the US military, who promise that they will save him so long as he can get to a certain location by 11 o'clock that night, before they are sent in to kill all of the infected. He convinces them to let him bring Emma along as well, so long as she's not infected at that point, because yay, romance subplot. I don't know, I'm rooting for these guys despite knowing how this is gonna end. Paul makes it back in time to save Emma and Ted before the professor gets them killed, but of course they get attacked pretty quickly after. Ted is killed by a newly infected section of the US military. May he rest in peace. Paul and Emma do manage to escape and get to the meeting site where there is a helicopter to take them to safety. But we can't have that last too long, so the people flying the helicopter are actually infected as well. In the process of trying to avoid getting killed and infected themselves, the helicopter crashes. Paul is fine, but Emma has a massive pipe going through her leg, and now there is very little hope of anybody surviving. Paul is determined to end this because he is now living through his own personal hell, and he refuses to get trapped in a musical, the thing he hates. So off he goes to the theater to go blow up the head of this hive mind using some grenades he stole from the military. Being so close to this meteor starts affecting Paul, and despite his own internal refusal, his body starts to sing and it starts taking him over. But he has enough of himself left, and he's coherent enough to pull a pin out of the grenade and blow it all up. Then it's just Emma in a government hospital. She's got a new name, a new identity, but she got out. Everyone's dead, but she's here. But then the US government lady was like, hey, actually, we have a guy to go with you to your new life, and he's actually pretty neat. And much to our and Emma's confusion, Paul walks out totally fine. They run into each other's arms, and for a moment, it's okay. But then the piano starts playing, and Paul begins to sing. It was all for nothing. They lost. Paul did not survive. And now he's out, and he is here and will infect the rest of the world. Everyone is doomed to be part of this musical hive mind. And as all of these characters from before start entering the stage and singing with Paul, she screams for help that will never come. The end! Woo! Time for some cross-story analysis. The most obvious parallel between these two stories is how the musicals take over a person and rid them of their humanity, though The Guy Who Doesn't Like Musicals has a much more violent approach to this. The visuals of how these people have their bodies move without them meaning to, like they're being puppeted by an entity outside of the story, looks almost exactly the same. I mean, the lyrics to Can't Stop Singing are literally, make it stop, am I real or just a prop? And for The Guy, this puppetry is actively the case, which we know from the other two musicals, as well as their podcast Nightmare Time within the Hatchetfield series. These projects introduce the characters the Lords of Black, who are these ancient eldritch beings who really like fucking with this one town in particular. All of these different stories take place in different timelines, but there is crossover with the characters in all of them because it is all happening within the same town. So Ted from this one is the older brother of the main character in the third musical, Nerdy Prudes Must Die. Either way, every single musical ends with this world-ending disaster. And then the Lords in Black just go to another timeline to fuck with these people all over again. We know that these guys can directly influence and take over people's bodies and minds. In the second musical, Black Friday, an entire cult is started, and people start killing each other over toys that are just simply made in the image of one of these lords. So to say that in The Guy Who Doesn't Like Musicals, this lord is just kind of playing Barbies with the planet as a whole wouldn't be that much of a stretch. And looking at how the characters in Teen Beach Movie act as they're getting assimilated into the musical world, it is just a slower process as opposed to the immediate takeover that we see in The Guy. But even then, with Paul as he is going up to the meteor, he is not getting immediately taken over. It is a slower process, and we see him fighting it off, much in the way that we see Mac do. If I'd only looked at the original film, it'd be a lot easier to explain it all away that they just got stuck into a movie and then came back out. But the end song disproves that, as they are still singing and dancing in a way they shouldn't be able to. And then the second one comes in and just hammers that point back in because Layla and Tanner singing and dancing in the quote-unquote real world is forcing those around them to join in. So obviously whatever's happening isn't just, oh, here's just the movie and then here's the real world. Something else is going on. The end of the second movie doesn't super help, as the entire plot of the series is just kind of scrapped and we're thrown into an alternate timeline, though I guess the alternate timeline does tie into the Hatchetfield series and all of its alternate timelines. But even if that weren't the case, they still have a song and dance number in the real world at the end during the drive-in movie at the beach. You could argue that we don't know if this is just like a flash mob situation, and so it would make sense that all of these people are doing this and aren't actually infected by this musical. We do, for a fact, know that Brady doesn't care about the movie that they are playing, Layla Queen of the Beach, so him being able to join in and sing and dance along in this choreographed number does not make sense then, and is very suspect. He should not be able to do that unless they are still trapped in a musical. Speaking of endings, both of these stories end off in very similar places, with all of the main characters not actually leaving the musicals that they are forced into. With my prior point, I think as late as the second movie at the end, Brady and Mac are just fully assimilated into a musical world, and with their memories being wiped, I don't think they ever remember a time where they weren't in a musical world. As early as the first movie, when they enter West Side Story, I think this is where they are first put in, and I don't think they ever leave, which would explain how they have a whole song and dance number at the end of the first one, and then all of the songs and dances of the second one in the real world would kind of make sense. They are just fully assimilated into this story, and sure, they keep their personalities, but they're still singing and dancing quite a lot. And with the guy who doesn't like musicals, once the whole world is infected, they are going to be singing and dancing without question, and no one's going to really know the difference, and probably after a while not even realize there was a time without it. And those characters also keep their personalities, so it does seem like they are in the same boat a little bit. Another interesting parallel is that the guy who doesn't like musicals as a musical somewhat acknowledges the fact that it is telling the same story over and over again every time it is being played. The opening song introduces some of what is going to happen, and the characters seem to know that they are just going through the motions every single time. And what also happens for the characters of West Side Story after Mac and Brady leave, they realize that they are telling the same story over and over again. Even the overarching story arcs for Mac and Paul kind of line up, as they start off as anti-musical and anti-singing and dancing, but they fight it as best they can and still end up in it. By the end, they are leading their own songs as their love interests stand and watch in either vague confusion or abject horror. I will say, Brady kind of encompasses more characters and is a little less directly one-to-one with somebody within the guy who doesn't like musicals, but Mac and Paul are very similar. What I'm about to say is going to be crazy, but hear me out. What if the Teen Beach movies were a precursor trial run for the infection in the guy who doesn't like musicals, all orchestrated by the Lord in Black who caused all of it, Pokey? In this hypothetical timeline, the Teen Beach movies take place around 2013 in accordance with its original release date, and about 5 years later, the Guy Doesn't Like Musicals timeline also happens in tandem with its release in 2018. To start, Pokey is a deeply powerful and bored creature and decides to fuck with humanity for a little while. And so, why not make an alternate universe in which a 1960s film is just constantly playing, forcing the characters to retell the story over and over again? Maybe he does this to the original actors, and they are in it until they forget, which, as a concept, I really enjoy. This isn't directly tied to anything we know of Pokey, but there is evidence that something like this would be completely reasonable in the Hatchetfield canon. One of the other Lords in Black named Tinky has done something very similar in the story The Time Bastard, in which he takes Ted and time travels him into the past, where Ted messes it all up, and then while he's living his life in the past, he slowly forgets who he is over time, and once he dies, he is then forever trapped within Tinky's box, called the Bastard Box, where he is just confused and just constantly within Tinky's possession for the rest of eternity. So, Pokey being able to do something kind of similar, just on a massive scale, does not seem terribly out of the question. Back to the timeline, Pokey decides to leave a key to this alternate universe within the human one, a magical surfboard that can bridge the gap between these two places. Why? To sow chaos, I guess, in hopes that one day someone will use it. What does he do in the in-between time? Who knows? But eventually, Mac decides to take that surfboard out, and I guess all of the right conditions are met, and so she and Brady are now transported into Wet Side Story. The plot then continues as it does, and Pokey realizes that this can go well beyond the world of the 60s, so he expands it. He sends Mac and Brady back to the real world and starts testing how he wants this infection to spread. Then the plot of the second movie happens, where he makes them believe they are out, that they have free choice, but they are already in his hive mind. And with the end of the second movie and all of the reset, they are just fully embraced into this world. But of course, his eyes turn back to Hatchetfield, a place that he and the other Lords in Black are continuously drawn to, and he wants to do it all again, but he wants it bigger and more violent. Not that it wasn't violent before, but he wants the deaths to be clear, overt, and gruesome, not a soft assimilation like it was for the Teen Beach Movie people. And then he does. And then everyone dies, and everyone is stuck in this world, telling the same stories over and over and over again. And no one's truly left alive. Now, are there plot holes in this? Almost definitely. But it does make a sort of sense that it really should not be able to, given the fact that this was absolutely not the intention of the creators. Let me live in my delusions. I am having fun in here. Shh. But to mention some potential issues just to get it out of the way. First, in Teen Beach Movie 2, when they are singing along at the end of the movie, Layla drops a jacket in the movie, and it somehow ends up in the real world with Mac. And I guess if you want to say that they are fully involved in this universe, and it's all just interconnected, that any magical thing like that could be explained by this, it's just weird, and I don't have a good reason for it in my theory, or elsewise, it just kind of happens. Second, Pokey as a character isn't a let's screw with people in a silly, goofy sort of way. He's more of a let's kill everybody sort of dude. So him being the one pulling all of this off doesn't make as much sense as someone like Tinky would. But since Pokey is the one who did The Guy Who Doesn't Like Musicals, he is our suspect, even if it doesn't make as much character sense for him. It just, that's the guy we have. Third, I don't have a great explanation for what happens to the Wet Side Story characters when they start disappearing in the second Teen Beach movie. My best guess is that they were just kind of yoinked from existence and put off into a little area to be used later, because they do show back up in Layla, Queen of the Beach, so they aren't like fully gone and erased and dead. They just disappeared for a while. I really don't know what happens to them. Even with these potential issues, I think there are probably some workarounds that would still make it all work out in the end, and the theory still stands. And just with the overwhelming amount of evidence for how these stories connect, it does feel very solid in a way that it shouldn't. Anywho, that's all I have for these two stories. For now. If I happen to miss any connections, I'd love to hear them in the comments below, but if you don't have any, just let me know what your favorite songs are from these musicals. I know I have a lot of opinions, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. And if you happen to like this video and would love to see more, I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. But elsewise, I will see you next month.